Sonic the Hedgehog is the latest film based off of a video game to be released. This one, of course, follows the tale of Sonic the Hedgehog, played by Ben Schwartz. He's been on the run for a very long time because of the fear that people are going to come after his speed powers. He's been staying on Earth for the past 10 years, laying low, but he can't help but feel a little lonely. After 10 years of being alone, an incident happens with him that alerts the world of his power. So the government sends a man named Dr Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey, to come investigate, which of course sends Sonic on the run. He bumps into the town sheriff, Tom, played by James Marsden. They kind of bond for a bit and decide to go to San Francisco together to help Sonic evade the law, avoid capture. I'm not the biggest gamer in the whole world. I think I've made that very clear with you guys. I've played Sonic games like casually before, never like in depth. I haven't played every single Sonic game. I'm not the hugest Sonic fan in the entire world, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So when I heard that they were going to go forward with a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I was just kind of indifferent towards it because video game movies have a pretty big track record of letting people down continuously. Last year we had two decent ones. I thought the Angry Birds movie was alright, but Pokemon Detective Pikachu I actually thought was a really fun time, especially for a movie that was more so geared towards younger children. I was actually able to be entertained by it, and I could see a lot of adults being entertained by it as well. Needless to say, when the first trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog came out, it looked horrendous, the movie looked terrible, and the design was awful. Of course, there was a huge uproar against the design that they had for Sonic, so of course the director and the people at Sega decided to postpone the movie's release date from November to now, February, so that they could fix the design and make it look a lot more video game accurate. So a new trailer dropped and revealed the new look of Sonic, and he looked much better, but for a guy like me, I just didn't really care that much about the movie still. Like, sure, the design is improved. Kudos to all the animators that worked tirelessly getting this thing to look as good as possible, but I just couldn't really bring myself to be that excited for the movie. But while walking into this movie, I did have some last minute kind of hopes because I did see that there was like a surprising amount of people on Twitter going, this movie actually wasn't that bad, it was a pretty fun time. So I thought maybe, just maybe, this could turn out to be a good movie. Maybe it could be the best video game movie that we have gotten so far, and unfortunately I walked out not thinking it was terrible, but about what I kind of would have expected for a video game adaptation. It was bad, but not irritating, not horrendously made, so it's kind of a step up from a bunch of the rest, but it's still not that good. Let me say this though before I get any more in depth with it, because I know a lot of people are probably going to say, Jackson, this movie's not made specifically for you. Not only are you not a Sonic fan, but you're not even a young kid anymore. I'm sure a lot of young kids will love this movie, and I will not argue with that. There are a couple younger children in the theater that definitely seemed like they were enjoying it. They were laughing at a lot of the jokes, so if they enjoyed it, that's obviously fine. I'm just talking about me. This is a channel where I discuss my opinions on the movies I saw. I'm not trying to speak for an entire generation of children that are going to see this, or the diehard Sonic fans that might get a huge kick out of this too. I'm just speaking as a guy who likes movies and likes to see them and likes being open to exploring these franchises with these movies. Like I said earlier, the design for Sonic is great. It looks fantastic. The CGI for him is wonderful. That's already a huge plus for it. Another plus that I had with this movie is that the story isn't that bad as far as a concept thing, because you have Sonic who's dealing with some internal dilemmas. He feels lonely. He feels like he has to be alone. So when the US government starts to realize that he may be around, he thinks he has to leave, but there's that pull that is telling him not to. They parallel that with Tom, played by James Marsden, who's about to get a new job with the SFPD, and he's thinking he needs this job, he needs to get higher up in the world, but there's a pull to stay in this hometown because he thinks that the people around there need him. He thinks that that's his family, but he feels like he has to leave because this new job is supposed to elevate him more so, even though that may not be exactly what he wants. There was a neat attempt to kind of make their characters parallel and tell this story in an interesting way that could have delivered a good message, and I commend them all for that. I just don't really think the execution really handled it all that well. I know this movie is about a speedy character, but I don't think opening up the movie with an incredibly too quick, fast pace is really how you should have handled adapting this character to the big screen. The movie opens with like an action scene from the third act, and then Sonic stops the frame and he's like, hey, let me narrate about what's going on because this is what's supposed to happen later. Let's go back a bit. Blah, 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 blah. He actually does that. They have a 2-minute scene dedicated to showing like a young Sonic on his homeworld, and instead of kind of getting you to know this character at a younger age, instead of trying to get you invested with how his life has been since he's been a little kid on this planet that we are now just seeing, they kind of just rush through how Sonic got to Earth. And then they quickly tell you that 10 years have passed. Sonic has basically been staying at this place called Green Hills. He feels some sort of connection with all the people there, but we don't really get a chance to get to know the town as a character. We just get the most out of James Marsden, and even then we don't really get to see a day in the life of him because he's supposed to have this really special relationship with the town, but we never really get to see what kind of cool things he does with the people, like why the people love him so much or why he would want to stay. Like, I'm just looking at it as he isn't really doing that much here, and it's kind of boring, but then it kind of becomes important later that he wants to stay because there's something special about it. They rush through it, so they really do undercut the story that they're trying to tell, the themes that they're trying to hit with the two characters. They even rush through these characters meeting up and bonding, because when they do meet up, it's almost like they're instantly being thrown into a situation where Robotnik's around the corner and you have to hide me. And I was thinking, if you spent a little bit more time with them getting to know each other first before being thrown into a Robotnik is here situation, I have to hide, maybe spend that time a little bit more to get to know each other a bit before having to force this new friendship that didn't really feel all that convincing. They get into arguments later about their beliefs on staying in this town or leaving, and that didn't even feel like it was a legitimate thing to develop the characters. They resolve it in a scene much, much later on that's not even near like the last 5 minutes. It's like before the third act even starts. So it feels like there's just a lot of wasted story potential here, not just with the overall story, because it's just a road trip movie, but it's the things you do with the road trip that can help elevate it. They do a lot of the basic stuff. They go on the run. For a moment, we see that James Marsden is wanted because Dr. Robotnik is painting it that he's a domestic terrorist, but that never really comes into play as far as any suspense or tension goes. Like, he's still able to walk around and go into buildings at certain points, but, you know, that's a certain trope that you could find on a road trip race against time movie. They go to a bar and start a bar fight, and Tika Sumpter plays James Marsden's girlfriend. They go meet up with her in San Francisco with her sister, and they freak out her sister because, oh my gosh, Sonic's an alien. They do a lot of the usual tropes that you would expect, all the while being hunted by a evil scientist that just wants Sonic to experiment on him. It's not that unique of a story other than they just pluck Sonic into it, so like I said, if they spent a lot more time with the other details of these characters and making them stand out more, and maybe making the situations in this story a little bit more unique, a little bit more clever, then it could have turned out good. But unfortunately, it just felt so obvious that they went with the safest approach possible. And you might be thinking, alright, well, if a lot of the character stuff fell flat for you, what about the action? Is that at least good? I mean, there's a couple things they do in the action scenes that can be kind of fun. There's like one shot cinematography-wise with Sonic and Dr. Robotnik staring each other down, and the colors in it, the visual effect, it looks outstanding. But other than that one shot, there's nothing really that special about any of these action sequences. And if I'm going to be honest, other than the Sonic design looking great, there's a lot of other visual effects moments where it's not that they look like visually unappealing, like, oh, I don't want to look at that. It's just it doesn't look real. It doesn't look tangible in the world. So I was constantly kind of taken out because I felt like I was looking right at a video game. And I know this is a movie based on a video game, but when you're bringing it into live action, you have to make it look like it fits into a real world. And I didn't think they did that. So the action kind of fell flat for me. The character writing and the writing as a whole kind of fell flat for me. What about the jokes? Because this is being promoted as more of a lighthearted comedy, and unfortunately, save for a couple lines said by Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik that actually kind of got me chuckling, I found this movie's humor flatlining constantly, and it bordered on irritating at a couple parts. I wouldn't say it's flat out irritating, but it almost got there a couple times. Ben Schwartz is the perfect voice actor to portray Sonic. I think he's perfect for the role. It's just they didn't give him great material to work with. I thought all of his jokes really fell flat. And I thought if you had given him the proper material, this could be a really great treatment for Sonic. But I just found the character unfunny, and I didn't really care to focus on him all that much. James Marsden is just playing a cop named Tom who's got a girlfriend, and he's about to move up in the world, but now he has to help Sonic. But that doesn't really seem to affect the rest of his life all that much. Like, as I mentioned earlier, even though the news is promoting him as a domestic terrorist, he's still able to walk around, show his face. He walks into a building, and because they need to get to the top of it, he holds up his badge and is like, there's a guy about to jump up there, we need to get to the top of the building. And the woman doesn't even call him out for being a domestic terrorist, just looks at it and goes, huh, that police badge says you're from Montana. And he's like, well, that's why it's a very serious situation. So she's like, oh, okay, here's the key. And it's like, real, like, even that, like, I know that's supposed to be a joke, but not only is it really not that funny, but we've seen this kind of concept done much better before. And after that, Sonic is hiding in his bag that he has to carry up because no one can see Sonic, and he just starts talking out loud for no reason, other than, oh, it's funny because it sounds like there's a kid in there, and James Marsden is flubbing up saying, no, there's no kid. I mean, well, yeah, there is a kid, and like, can we just stop? I don't think these two characters are bad together per se, because the actors are trying to give it something, but not only is the material not working for them character-wise, but also the humor is not making them stand out that much. And the girlfriend played by Tika Sumpter is just there to be the supportive girlfriend. She's a vet, so she helps out at one point, but it doesn't really feel like their relationship is tested. It doesn't feel like there's any history to their relationship, similar to how it doesn't feel like there's a relationship between Sonic and Tom with the rest of this town, but whatever, they have to keep moving fast, gotta go fast. One of my biggest disappointments though walking out of this movie was definitely Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik. Now, he is definitely crazy. He is committed to being crazy as this role, and that's fantastic. I'm glad that he was able to commit to it, and it didn't seem like there was a moment where he was bored. However, I feel like we've seen Jim Carrey at this level of insanity much better. Either he's had better material to work with in the past, or he was able to improv stuff that actually was really funny. But for this movie, it didn't really feel like he was being crazy funny. It just felt like he was being crazy, and his character's backstory that he occasionally brings up is kind of quirky, but it's not really fitting. Like I said though, there's a couple jokes that he says that did get me chuckling, so he's not the worst part about this movie, but I was disappointed because I thought Jim Carrey could really nail this character, because from what I know about Eggman, he's very over the top, very loud, and Jim Carrey matches that perfectly, and I love Jim Carrey as an actor, but it just didn't make me feel anything by the time the movie ended. So overall, despite a handful of pros that I can give this movie, unfortunately I just walked out thinking it was a very generic kids film, not the worst video game adaptation out there, but it definitely had the potential to be much better. I know a lot of people might look at this movie and just acknowledge they fixed the design, that's all that matters, now I'll have fun with this movie, but I really do feel like this movie has way worse problems than just that original design, although I will say that original design is terrible. But there's also other things about this movie that they do creatively that I just didn't really think worked. For example, to add on to the other examples that I've given, there's two moments where they copy the X-Men, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse Quicksilver scenes, and that's kind of expected. They're making it about a fast character, but in those movies, they stick to the rule that although he's moving fast, everything else around him is moving just very slowly, so when the mansion starts to blow up, he's gotta go as quick as possible and get what he needs done before the rest of the building blows up in that slow time. And the same in Days of Future Past, if he doesn't move the bullets, it will definitely impale Magneto and Professor X. The two times they do it in this movie, the first time they do it at the bar, and he's moving so quickly that nothing is going, like everything's just frozen in time, and I was like, okay, it seems like what he was doing beforehand wouldn't match with this insane amount of speed that he has now, but whatever, I don't care, whatever, it's whatever, that's a nitpick. But then later on, he's face down with a bunch of drones and Robotnik, who's about to press something. Sonic starts moving really fast and is destroying all the drones, but then they cut to Jim Carrey, who is still slowly moving. So I was like, okay, so originally in the bar, nothing else was going. They were all frozen, but now Jim Carrey's like moving slowly. It's like, you gotta have some consistency. That might sound like a little problem, but I feel like it goes back to the overarching problem that it feels like a lot of this potential wasn't really reached, or it just didn't feel as developed as it should. The way the movie ends doesn't really feel all that satisfying, because not only do they decide to kind of try to end certain things with a joke that really fell flat and doesn't really make that much sense considering what else happened, but because they didn't build up on stuff before, it doesn't really feel like they're really closing out anything that's significant at the end, so it's just kind of like, whatever, the movie's over. They do give you a mid-credit scene that hints at a future Sonic movie by just having a Sonic character show up. So, I mean, if you're just excited by post-credit scenes that have characters you know that have yet to be introduced in the series, then here you go. You'll enjoy this movie, maybe. I'm gonna give Sonic the Hedgehog a C-. It could have been a lot better, but it also could have been a lot worse. The design for Sonic does look fantastic, though, and it does have some good ideas in there that I wish they fleshed out more. There's a couple good jokes in there that I wish remained consistent throughout the rest of the movie, and it does have some moments of action where I was like, okay, that's not too bad. I just wish the movie was a little bit more consistent, instead of just staying like a flat, generic kids movie that kids will enjoy. So if they're really hyped up to go see Sonic, then let them go see it. They'll have fun. But if you're an adult, you might check out of it. But if you've seen Sonic the Hedgehog, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.